Amen. All right. Good to see everybody today. Welcome to class number 6 of Integral Kabbalah for the Days of Awe. We are going to be just going to check on the muting folks here. Sounds like there's someone needs to be muted. There we go. Okay. Today we are entering into the Sefirah of HOD. And to begin, let's once again briefly go through the Sefirot as we have learned them already. So the first Sefirah is Keter, and Keter, the gate of Keter, is something we can enter right now when we recognize that reality as it is, whatever it is, we're not grasping it intellectually, we're just recognizing that there is something, there is isness, and here it is, and it is one. This isn't a belief or something you have to have faith in. It's just a fact that there is isness, there is reality, and there's one reality. And so bringing our mind to simply rest in that recognition is coming into the gate of Keter. And then once we do that, we can also recognize that this reality is appearing as something in and as our consciousness right now. And that brings us to the next sefirah, which is Chokhmah. Chokhmah is the space of awareness within which our present moment experience is happening. It might be a delightful experience, it might be a horrible experience. Whatever it is, it still comes down to this basic duality of consciousness that is aware, which is what we are at the root of our being, beneath our personality, beneath our thoughts and feelings, and what we are aware of on the level of thoughts, on the level of feelings, emotions, on the level of the world as it appears around us. And that's Chokhmah, is recognizing the awareness that we are within which this moment appears. Which brings us to number 3, which is Bina. And Bina is recognizing that the last 2 sefirot we just did, the coming into recognizing oneness and then noticing that we are this consciousness, is all directed by the orchestration of thought. That through the thinking mind, we can remind ourselves, that we can remind ourselves of this oneness and remind ourselves that we are consciousness and that within this consciousness is everything appearing. But we're doing this through thought. And as I'm talking, these words are expressions of thoughts. And so Bina has the quality of channeling, of limiting, whereas Chokhmah is just spacious awareness. But in order to notice the spacious awareness, our thought has to be directed toward that. And so in this way, the thinking mind has the potential to lead us beyond the thinking mind. When we go beyond the thinking mind and we relax our thoughts so that we're not absorbed into thinking, we are able to do that with the help of thought, not merely through the negation of thought, but we need that thought to help us go beyond thought. The next sefirah that we entered was, we need to do a little muting here. Okay, the next sefirah that we entered is Malchut. We went all the way back down to the bottom of the tree. And Malchut now brings in another thought, which is simply, it's not really different from the original Keter thought, but it's an elaboration on it, which is to recognize that oneness of reality that is ever present, both within and as our consciousness and without our consciousness. Reality is simply what it is. That oneness is expressed in every particular thing. So we look around at the beings, the objects around us, the room. We look at ourselves, we feel our bodies, we sense everything that is being sensed and recognize that it is all of it uh, are embodiments of this, what we might call the mystery of being. We could also call it Hashem. So that's Malchut, bringing ourselves into a relationship with the world where the world becomes Malchut to us because we are honoring, we are devoting ourselves to that underlying divinity, the underlying oneness behind everything. Finally, last week we came to Yasod, and Yasod means foundation. And so what is the foundation? We talked about a couple different levels of foundation. And by foundation, we're talking about the foundation of the path, foundation of the spiritual path. What is it that really underpins it, without which it kind of falls apart? And that is, on the deepest level, the sensing of the inherent goodness or the inherent joy of being on the path. And we can sense this right now simply by becoming present, recognizing the Malchut, recognizing the divinity in all things, and giving ourselves over to its purpose, to its intention for reality, to put ourselves in our hearts in a devotional relationship with it, and to just feel what that feels like and sense the goodness of that. There's an inherent joy as we come more deeply into meditation. You can also begin to sense a blissfulness, an openness, a spaciousness, an inner freedom. These are all words that point to the fruit of meditation, which you may have experienced, and if you haven't yet, then stick with it. That will come. That's a fruit that blossoms. So that's Yasod on the deepest level, but we also talked about how on the more external level that this is facilitated through the support of community. So that's what we're doing right now when we gather together and we look and we see all these wonderful people. Looks like 43 people on the Zoom today. There's a field that is generated by the experience of being in the group and learning and practicing together that can help us to connect on a few different levels. We're connecting, of course, with each other, and that's the community part. But in doing that also helps us to connect with that inherent goodness or that inherent joy. And that brings us to the next sphera today, which is HOD. HOD is often translated as humility and gratitude. Now, why are these two things together? So one clear expression of HOD as both humility and gratitude is in the tefillah, in the prayer that's traditionally said the moment you wake up in the morning. So there's a prayer, you may know it. It says, Modei ani lefenecha, melech chai v'kayam, shehechazarta binishmati bechemla rabba emunetecha. And it's a prayer of giving thanks that we are waking up in the morning, that we're alive. Modei is the masculine version, moda is the feminine version, but the word modei or moda is the same root as the word hod, and the straight translation is I give thanks. I give thanks before you for returning my life or my soul to this body. But the word modei or moda has another meaning too. Uh, it can also be used when you are in a disagreement, in some kind of argument with somebody, and you recognize that you were wrong, that the person you're arguing with actually has a better point to make, and you are conceding the argument. So to concede is to be modeh or moda to that other person. Now, conceding is, I think, probably one of the best examples of humility, because um, we know that the opposite of humility is arrogance, but often the arrogance that is the opposite of HOD is not something that's really obvious. There is a personality quality of arrogance that some people have, but even if you don't have that quality of arrogance, you can notice, we can all notice, when we hear an opinion uh, that we don't agree with that feels like an attack. Sometimes people are having an opinion we don't agree with and they are attacking. But other times, they're not really attacking, they're just expressing an opinion that we don't agree with. And there can be a feeling of being triggered, of having negative emotion triggered because we feel like we're being personally attacked. And intellectually, we might explain it to ourselves as outrage or just being, how could a person think that way? All these things are rooted in a natural unconscious process of identifying with our minds, identifying with our opinions and our thoughts. And there's that's one of the most common examples of how ego gets constructed within ourselves. And it's unconscious. There are things we can do to undermine our own egos, but a lot of it just happens without our knowing that it's happening. Um, and so, therefore, the gift is when we feel that sense of being triggered. That's showing us when how ego has formed. Otherwise, we don't necessarily, we're not even necessarily aware of it. We can relax, we can become very meditative and devotional, experience that spaciousness, and not know that lurking behind there is this ego until something in our environment triggers it and it comes up. And so that's good when it comes up, because then we can say, ah, there it is. There is that opposite of HOD, that opposite of gratitude and humility, and just be conscious of it, not get drawn into its drama, but be conscious. That's the fundamental way that we can rise above it and not be trapped by it, is simply by noticing it. We don't have to really do much other than not buy into it with our minds, not buy into our thoughts, not believe everything we think, as we might, as the saying goes. So there's some wonderful stories that I want to tell you to illustrate this property of being modeh or modah, that is being humble, and particularly in relation to that tendency to want to be right. So there's a story of the Seer of Lublin, who was a Hasidic Rebbe, third generation Hasidic Rebbe. And the story goes that in Lublin there was the main Rav of the town, a guy by the name of Azriel Hurwitz. And he was known as the Iron Head, because he was such a master of learning. He was such an incredible scholar. But the Iron Head would get very annoyed and upset with the seer, because people would come and want to be with the seer, want to learn with the seer, and he didn't understand because he thought the seer was nothing compared to him in terms of his learning. So one time he comes to the seer and he says, I don't understand. All these people are coming to you. They think you're so great. They think you're such a tzaddik. And you yourself have admitted to me that you're not such a tzaddik. So this is what I want you to do. Next time they come to you for Shabbat, so that's when many people the gatherings of people would happen on Shabbat and the different meals and so on. So next time they come to you, I want you to tell them that you're no tzaddik. Tell them what you really are. And the seer said, okay, I'll do it. No problem. And so the Hasidim come, they gather around him, they want to hear words of Torah, and he tells them, he says, look, I know you come here to think, you think I'm something great, but I'm really not. I'm not such a great tzaddik. I'm no big deal, so please don't give me that honor like I'm some kind of big tzaddik. And the Hasidim, when they heard this, their hearts just set on fire even more. They said, "Oh, what a humble person this is. He truly is a tzaddik. He's so humble." And so even they got into him even more. They were even more excited about him. So the next time the seer came and saw the the ironhead said, "So what happened?" The seer said, I told them what I said I was going to tell them, but they just loved me even more." The Rav, like, he considered this. He said, that's the way it is with you Hasidim. You love humility. You think that's so great. Okay, this is what you should do. Next time, next Shabbos, when they all come to you, tell them you are the greatest tzaddik in the world. Tell them that you are Hashem's elect, that you are the chosen one to lead all Jewish people to freedom and to Mashiach. You're the one. And the seer said, I can't do that. I said, what do you mean you can't do that? You said that you would help to try to set them straight. He said, I agree that I'm not tzaddik, but I'm also not a liar. So that's the first story. I love, in this time of our cultural climate is so filled with attacking each other, always attacking, trying to tear people down. This is just a great lesson in these stories. The second one is also about the same two people, about the Seer of Lublin and the Ironhead. And the Ironhead comes to the Seer of Lublin and he says, I don't understand. He says, I have so much more learning than you. I'm so much more scholarly than you. And yet people come to you. And your learning is like nothing compared to me. Why is this so? Why does everybody come to you and not me? And the seer says, I agree with you. I too am astounded that people are coming to me and not going to you when we all know that your learning moves mountains. So he says, but perhaps this is the reason, is that because I'm astounded that they come to me, that's why they come to me. And because you're astounded that they don't come to you, that's why they don't come to you. So this is this quality of HOD, quality of humility, quality of, which is a kind of a simple quality, having thankfulness for where we're at, not thinking we are entitled to more, but being simple, being open, and having that quality that we can feel is what's known as the eighth Sefirah on the Tree of Life. Now, how do we do this? So I mentioned at one point that even though we're talking about the Sefirot separately, they really work together, and we can't just focus only on one, because as soon as we start focusing on one, we're going to need the help from another one to help us focus on that one. And Netzach and Hod are certainly like that. So even though we're doing Netzach next week, I'll talk a little bit just about what that is. Netzach has to do with commitment and following through and being persistent and being constant. So it has a forward motion to it. It has we have to know what we're doing, and we have to overcome obstacles in order to be vigilant. Whereas Hod is more just simple, like I'm nothing. Thank God for everything that I have. Thank God for how it is. So they have these different energies. But the truth is, in order to really develop that a connection with that inner quality of Hod, I don't want to say develop Hod, because the Hod is already a simple quality of awareness as it is. It's already there. But it's more about developing our rootedness in that, developing our sense of ourselves as that, as opposed to that being more in the background and inaccessible. And to do that, we need that netzach quality, and we need that vigilance. So there's a wonderful piece in the Parsha that's coming this week. So I'm going to put that on the screen. Here we go. All right. How about Shalom? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the Deuteronomy? All right. Great. Thanks, everybody. So this is Parshat Shoftim that we're beginning this week. Shoftim means judges. And it says, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sharecha asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha lishvatecha v'shaftu et ha'am mishpat tzedek. Shoftim v'shotrim means judges and officers. Titein lacha, you give to yourselves or appoint for yourselves. B'chol sha'arecha, in all of your gates. Then it says down here, Lo tateh mishpat, lo takir panim, v'lo tikach shochad. Ki hashochad ya'aver einei chochamim v'salef tifrei tzadikim. So you shouldn't, don't tateh mishpat, don't pervert the judgment, and then don't be partial, meaning don't favor someone aside from what is actually the true and just thing. It literally means, takir panim means respect faces. It's a funny idiom, but it means, it doesn't mean respect in general. It means giving more respect to somebody. It's a funny thing, so relevant for our times, right? Don't respect someone because of what their face looks like. And you shall not take a bribe, because bribes blind the eyes of the Chachamim, and they make crooked the words of the just. So on a straight ahead level, of course, this is talking about justice in society, setting up a judicial system as opposed to just one person making all the decisions. And you know, in the Torah system, there's you have multiple judges on cases. You know, in our system, we have a judge and then we have a jury, which is kind of similar. You have multiple points of view. In the Jewish system, you have a Beit Din, but you also have witnesses. You have to have witnesses in cases. Okay, this is the great line, the Liberty Bell line. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, leman tichyeh, v'yarashta et haaretz, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land that Hashem, your divinity, gives you. So again, of course, this is, we know what the outer level of this means, having justice in how we have a culture, have a society. But on the inner level, okay, tzedek, justice, means not being partial or not having a bias, which is inherent in our ego. So we all have an inherent ego bias because we have a certain point of view on things, right? We don't choose what thoughts pop into our mind, and we can't see beyond the particular point of view we have. So we automatically have a certain bias always for what is shown to us in the moment and what thoughts happen to appear in our heads and what thoughts we happen to have accumulated there, right? Our opinions and so on. But we also have the ability to rise above that. It doesn't mean that we automatically have the points of view of other people. We'd have to work at that. We'd have to deliberately do a mental exercise or talk to other people. We have to communicate, right? But even without any of that, just unilaterally, we can when we recognize our own bias, then we're free from it. We can say, okay, there's my own, this is just my own limited opinion. This is the way it looks to me. And just in saying that, we are what's the word? We're stopping the ego production in its tracks. That's a way to say it. So here's a way that we can summarize this. The shoftim and the shotrim, what are these judges and officers? Well, the shoftim means judge. And so the judge in the inner level means recognizing the appearance of thought. That in and of itself is such a radical thing. It's so obvious, but we don't tend to do it. We tend to just think our thoughts. We're not also recognizing, oh, there are some thoughts that are popping there into my mind. Just that, though, reveals the higher level of our consciousness, a higher perspective on thoughts. That's the shoftim. And then the shotrim is contemplating with our bina ability, our ability to think about our own thoughts, to have an objective view and say, okay, do I want to continue rambling on in my mind right now about this? Is that necessary? Or can I let go of this stream of thought? And the more you practice this, the more you realize, most of the time I can let go of this stream of thought. Sometimes, of course, you need to think about something, figure something out, come to some decision. But often the mind is just rambling and rambling. And so shoftim and shotrim allows our minds to be more spacious and clear, and therefore free ourselves from the unconscious bias of ego, that is the self-sense that arises from identification with thought and opinion, and therefore just become more modeh, or moda, to be in a state of HOD, a state of gratitude and humility instead of assertion of what is right and what should be and what we're entitled to and so on. Okay, let's look at another little piece here. This comes from a little bit later in the Parsha, and it's just another great example of HOD. So it's talking about when you set a king. It's talking to the Israelites, children of Israel, saying when you come into the land, you're going to want to set up a king. You can do that, but you gotta limit it. Don't fall into the trap that most societies fall into with kings, right? It says the king shouldn't have too many horses, so that they don't return the people to Egypt in order to increase the horses. I guess Egypt was the place to get horses back then. I don't know. Hashem said, don't return on this path anymore. Don't go back to Egypt. And then the king can't just be like one of these rich and powerful people that does whatever they want. They shouldn't have too many wives. Their heart shouldn't turn astray. They shouldn't have so much gold and silver and so on. So the idea here, it's obvious what it means on the outer level. But on the inner level, Egypt, Mitzrayim, is another metaphor for ego. It comes from the root Tsadi Resh, which means narrow, means constricted. Again, because Egypt is a narrow country along the Nile, but the Kabbalists always saw this as a metaphor for the limitedness, the sense of limited identity, of being stuck internally. And so don't return to Egypt to increase your horses. I like to see the horses here as a metaphor for the mind, because the horses take you from one place to another, and they gallop. They go. They're a symbol of movement, and that's the way our thoughts are. Our thoughts are constantly trying to take us here and there, and their tendency is to take us away from where we are. So we need the horses. The horses are important, but don't increase the horses and return to a state of ego by giving power to the running horses of the mind. And then, of course, these other things, too many wives, too much gold and silver. It's just about power and gratification. Don't make your life about those things, but those things naturally arise in the mind again. And so brings us always back to this shoftim and shotrin of watching our own minds and being careful not to get carried away with the thoughts that arise there, but to be the higher perspective on our thoughts. Here's a wonderful little Mishnah on Pirkei Avot expressing similar idea. Hillel Omer, the famous Rabbi Hillel, Al tifrosh min hatzibor. Don't separate yourself from the community. Why? Well, because it's from community, from connecting with other people, that you can most directly connect with other perspectives. Otherwise, so connecting with community is about Yasod, partially being supported and having that positivity on the path, but community, the tzibur, is also important in order to cultivate HOD. It's what allows us to not be stuck in our own points of view, but we should have conversations with people who have different points of view, don't agree with us. Now, of course, people don't tend to do that. People tend to connect with people that have the same exact points of view. And so then the tzibur, the community, becomes almost like a mega ego. It becomes like these big collective egos. Now, in a traditional Jewish community, however, they have it's structured in such a way that it's a lot less individualistic. Like in mainstream culture today, we especially the American ideals, we have a lot of personal freedom, and I'm not knocking that in any way, but I'm just saying that the context in which this Mishnah was written was in a traditional community in which you don't just that's not the assumption. The assumption is that you have to work in harmony with the community, and there's a structure of how decisions are made and so on. But anyway, the point is still something that we can all apply, regardless of what community we're in, which is stay connected to other people and open ourselves to other points of view, which leads us to the next piece here. Va'al ta'amin ba'atzmecha ad yom motcha. Don't believe in yourself until the day you die. That sounds like the opposite advice of what we're used to hearing. You should believe in yourself, right? But I think we have to understand, we have to believe in ourselves in the sense in which that English expression comes. What this means, don't believe in yourself, is it means don't believe in your own opinions as absolute truth. Don't believe in yourself, meaning don't buy into your own thoughts. But of course, we should believe in ourselves in the sense of having faith that where we are and what we're doing is empowered and supported. So we still need that Yasod, that foundation of positivity, to believe in our path. But don't believe everything you think. And the fact that it says ad yom motcha, until the day you die, is very significant, because we can understand this as being the death of ego, the death of that sense of self that is Mitzrayim, that is narrow. If we don't buy into our own thoughts so much, then we get to put our egos to death, in a sense. Va'al tadin et chaveiro ad shetagia limkomo. Don't judge your chaver, your companion, until you've reached their place. Once again, emphasizing this idea that we all have limited perspectives, and before we jump on someone and judge somebody and say how they're, how wrong they are, we have to understand what their experience is and where they're coming from and what they're trying to do. This, again, I think is so timely, so common for people to be jumping on each other and judging each other so much. So these are such important such important Mishnayot for us. Now this is the chant that we're going to do for this week. This is a from a piyut that is traditionally sung in Sephardic, in the Sephardic version of the Yom Kippur service at Ne'ilah, which is at the end of Yom Kippur. Okay, and it says El Nora Alilah. El is the divine, Nora is awesome, Alila means elevated or transcendent, divine, elevated. So already there's this recognition that there's something much greater than our own minds, than our own perception. It's transcendent of all that. And that brings us to a place of open humility, of gratitude. Hamtzi lanu mechila. Hamtzi find for us, mechila, forgiveness, bisha'at ha'ne'ilah, at the hour of ne'ilah, which could be, ne'ilah could mean the closing or the locking. And so the idea in Yom Kippur, of course, is that we're coming to the end of Yom Kippur, and Yom Kippur is a special time to ask for forgiveness, and then at the end, the gates close. We understand that the gates don't really close, but, in fact, the rabbis, as the tradition developed, they kept pushing the closing of the gates more and more into the future. They said, oh, no, it doesn't really close until Sukkot. No, not until Simchat Torah. No, it doesn't really close. They kind of extend it out because, of course, these are all just ways of thinking in order to intensify the auspiciousness of the moment. I don't think we should take it literally. But these gates, it relates to the parsha that we learned in the beginning. Shoftim v'shotrin titein lecha b'chol sha'arecha. In all of your gates, you should put these judges and officers. And so the idea here is that we have the ability to close our gates in the sense, meaning not just get swept away with the horses of thinking, but to say enough is enough, and to claim our birthright, which is freedom and spaciousness. We claim it as soon as we recognize thought for what it is and allow thoughts to subside and just be that simple spaciousness, that simple openness of consciousness that we are. But one of the barriers that people sometimes feel is that if we let go of our thoughts, that we're somehow that we're not entitled to that inner freedom. We sometimes feel as if we don't deserve to claim what we already are. We feel guilty in some sense. Like there's so much suffering going on. There's so much that needs to be taken care of. Why shouldn't I, maybe I should be neurotic about it. I should be concerned. My mind should be going about it. But of course, it doesn't really make sense. We need to think in order, to whatever degree is useful, but we don't need to constantly have this moving mind. We have this inner resource of goodness, of spaciousness, and we can claim it. But it's natural to feel, yeah, I see Beth, you've been through that. Yeah, it's a common psychology that can arise where we feel guilty to just relax. And so I'm seeing this prayer in this kind of way. It's a different way of seeing the words. But find for us forgiveness, meaning, if there's something wrong with me experiencing this freedom and claiming this nachala, this birthright of divinity, then forgive me. Like letting go of being right. Like we're not asserting it. No, it's mine. No, that in itself is contrary to the energy of it. So there has to be this humility with it, and having that humility, letting go, saying, forgive me if there's anything wrong, but I'm closing the gates now, meaning I'm closing the gates to the wild horses. And we are going to come into the spaciousness of the present moment. Amen. So let's sing the words. Goes like this. And by the way, there are many verses to this piyut. We are just going to be singing this, the refrain here. El Nora Alela, El Nora Alela, Chamselanu Mechila, Bishat Haneila, El Nora Alela, El Nora Alela, Hamselanu Mechila, Bishat Haneila, El Nora Alela, El Nora Alela, Hamselanu Mechila, Bishat Haneila, El Nora Alela, El Nora Alela, Hamselanu Mechila, Bishat Haneila, El Nora Alela, El Nora Alela, Hamselanu Mechila, Bishat Haneila, El Nora Alela, El Nora Alela, Hamselanu Mechila, Bishat Haneila, Hey na 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 ya ya yo, Anai na 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 ya ya ya, ha ha na 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 na, Hadai ma na na ya na ya, Hadai na 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 ya na na, ha ha na 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 na. Let's come back to the words. El Nora Alela, El Nora Alela, Hamselanu Mechila, Bishat Haneila, El Nora Alela, El Nora Alela, Hamselanu Mechila, Bishat Haneila. And preparing to come into meditation, letting go of the stream of thinking, locking the gates, so to speak, putting the horses away, the running horses of the mind, and instead offering awareness from our hearts on the altar of our hearts, offering our attention to the fullness of this moment as it appears, bringing right hand to your heart and offering awareness with Lecha and a long out breath. Deep breath in. Lecha. And bringing left hand to your belly, feeling awareness shining down into your organs, soaking light into your cells, the energy of gratitude, modeh, modah, ani lefanecha. We give thanks for the life in our bodies, awareness shining down through our legs to our feet and toes. Awareness shining upward back into our chest and upper back, shoulders and neck, flowing down through our arms to our hands and fingers, shining up into your face, facial muscles, bringing a little smile to your lips to express this quality of Yasod, this joyful positivity to be here in the temple of the body. Awareness soaking into your brain cells, your nerves, flowing down through your spine, branching out in the inner tree of life, filling your whole body with a light of presence and resting awareness on the flow of your breathing. And anchoring body awareness with Na'aseh. Deep breath in. And bringing right hand to lightly touch your forehead. Awareness shining out from the body, filling the space around you, shining out infinitely in all directions. Resting awareness on the perceptions around you, the sounds, objects, beings, and becoming one with the fullness of the experience of this moment on all levels: sensory awareness, emotion, feeling, mood, thoughts as they come and go, knowing that all of this arises in one vast field of consciousness, and you are this vast field, you are this openness, this silence. Venishma, deep breath in. Venishma. Kissing your fingers, relaxing your hands. Atahu, Atyahi, you who are the oneness of all being, completely present right now. There is only you in the form of all things, and as this consciousness that is recognizing you in this moment. Atahu, Atyahi. Atahu. Mind rest in the vibration of the tefillah, Atahu, Atyahi, recognizing and letting go of thoughts as they arise, and we'll come into silence for the remaining time. And closing the meditation, once again, bringing your right hand to your heart and offering awareness with lecha and a long out breath. Deep breath in. Lecha. Bringing left hand to your belly, feeling awareness down into your organs, shining out from there in all directions to fill the vessel of your body. Anchoring body awareness with Na'aseh. Deep breath in. And bringing right hand to your forehead. Awareness shining outward into the space. Sensing the vast openness, the silent field that you are beyond the body, beneath thoughts and feelings. V'nishma, deep breath in. V'nishma. Kissing fingers, relaxing your hands. As we come into this week of HOD, may we be vigilant with shoftim and shotrin. You can bring this metaphor to mind many times throughout the day, to be the one that recognizes the appearance of thoughts, and then to choose wisely which thoughts to follow, which thoughts to simply let dissipate, and to cultivate thoughts that emanate from HOD, thoughts of recognizing the blessings and of expressing gratitude for that which we have and that which we are. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen. Amen.
שוקעים לך נפשם, מחפישם וחשם, וחצי המחילה בשעת הנעילה. אל נורא עלילה, אל נורא עלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה. אל נורא עלילה, אל נורא עלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה. הם להם לסדרה וחצי לממרה, וחתמם להוד ולגילה בשעת הנעילה. חון אותם ברחם, וכל לוחץ ולוחם, עשה בהם דלילה בשעת הנעילה. אל נורא עלילה, אל נורא עלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה. אל נורא עלילה, אל נורא עלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה. זכרו צדקת אביכם וחדש את ימיכם, כקדם ותהילה בשעת הנעילה. חרנה שנת רצון וכשם שעה חצון, לא הוא לי רב לא עולה בשעת הנעילה. אל נורא עלילה, אל נורא עלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה. אל נורא עלילה, אל נורא עלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה. תזכו לשנים רבות, הפנים והאבות, בציצה וביצלה בשעת הנעילה. מיכאל שר ישראל, אליהו וגבריאל, בספונה הגאולה בשעת הנעילה. אל נורא בשעת הנעילה, ערנה לעלילה, ערנה לעלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה, ערנה לעלילה, ערנה לעלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה, ערנה לעלילה, ערנה לעלילה, המצא לנו מחילה בשעת הנעילה.
Amen. Amen.